Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to rewrite in standard form. So what I'm talking about is a conic parabola. So if it's not in standard form, how do we do that? Today we're going to learn via example. I'm going to write out the steps for you for the first one, and then for the second one I won't. We'll just refer to the steps from before. So rewrite the equation y squared minus 8y plus x equals negative 18 in standard form. So standard form, if you remember from our last video, is either y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h, or x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. So we need to get it in one of these forms. Clearly it's not. So the first thing we want to do, actually the first thing I want to do is rewrite the original equation. I think it's helpful for us, especially for notes. I wouldn't normally do this if I were personally taking an assessment of some kind. But let's be very organized. So this is the original equation. So the first thing we want to do is look at our original equation and go, okay, what is being squared? Because that's going to be what we want to eventually be either x minus k, or sorry, x minus h or y minus k. So because we have a y squared, the first thing we want to do is isolate that part of the quadratic. So what I mean by that is we're going to have y squared minus 8y, and we want to isolate that, so I'm going to move over the x. So I'll have equals negative x minus 18. So first isolate the quadratic expression. Remember, this is going to depend. Is it x squared or is it y squared? Okay. Now, the next step, we don't actually need for this problem, but I would like you to write it down anyway. So sometimes we have an a value, right? Like a 4y squared. If there's a number in front, if we have a coefficient, an a value, we want to factor that out. If there is one. And we'll do an example like this next. Okay, but for this example, there isn't one. We're keeping it simple. So the next thing we want to do, if you remember from Algebra 1, is complete the square. So what that means is we are essentially completing the square to force the left side to factor to be a perfect square. So if you don't remember that, it's okay. I'll re-jog your memory. So complete the square is the next step. And you likely proved this in Algebra 1. But the method for completing the square is you take your b value, divide it by 2, and square it. So our b value for this is negative 8. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Squared is positive 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 16 to my left side to force this to be a perfect square. I'm also going to add it to the right side because I have to make sure that my equation is balanced. Can't actually change the problem. We're just simply manipulating the problem. Okay, so I added 16 to the left and added it to the right. And the reason this isn't changing, it's manipulating, is because if I subtracted 16, right, I'd have 0, right? Nothing. It would go right back. So we haven't changed anything, we've only manipulated. Now this is perfect because on the left side, this is now going to factor out to be a perfect square. What multiplies to negative 16 and adds to negative 8? Well, we kind of forced it over here to be whatever b over 2 is. Right? Negative 4 square root is 16. Negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. So what I'm going to do now is factor that left side. And then on the right, we're going to just simplify. So negative 18 plus 16 is negative 2. So factor the left side, the quadratic, and then simplify. Okay, now this isn't quite the right form, right? We have something being squared, but this should be in parentheses if there's anything being multiplied by that x or y value. So here, because we have a negative 1, we want to factor that out. So our final answer will be y minus 4 squared equals negative x plus 2. And now it's in standard form. So I'm going to have like a weird thing where I'm going to say just rewrite in standard form. Because it depends on the problem. In this case, we factored out the p-value. But that won't be the case for every problem, and I'll show you again in the next example. So there you have it. One problem where we're completing the square. That's essentially what you need to do to rewrite a parabola in standard form. Now let's do another problem that's a little bit more challenging and has that a value I was referring to. So rewrite the equation. Negative 2x squared plus 20x minus y minus 51 equals 0 in standard form. Alright, because these are our notes, I'm going to rewrite this again. So negative 2x squared plus 20x minus y minus 51 equals 0. So a couple things are different. One of them is we have an x squared, not a y squared like we did in the last problem. So we still want to follow that first step, isolate the quadratic expression. So we want just x's on the left side. So that'll be negative 2x squared plus 20x. And then I'm going to move over my y and my 51. So I'll have a positive y and a positive 51 on the right side. Now this is the part that's different. We need to factor out the a value if there is one. This is not greatest common factor. This is whatever a is. So because a is negative 2, we need to factor out negative 2. So negative 2x squared divided by negative 2 is x squared. 20 divided by negative 2 is negative 10x. And the right side stays as is. Our next step is going to be to complete the square. Now this is going to be a little different, so pay very close attention. b divided by 2, so negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And negative 5 squared is positive 25. So I'm going to just pause right there. So this is my completed square of 25. Now if you remember, we had to add 16 to both sides. That is going to be a little different here because this isn't actually 25, right? We factored out a negative 2. It's negative 2 times 25. So the number we're going to add over here is going to be negative 50. Okay, I want to keep everything balanced. And if I reintroduce this negative 2, this would be negative 50. So that's what we have to do on the right side. Now, we can factor and simplify. So on the left side, I'm going to bring down the negative 2. This is going to be factoring to x minus 5 squared. And then I'm going to simplify on the right, and 51 minus 50 is positive 1. Now again, remember the last step. We almost have it in standard form, but it's not quite, right? We don't want anything over here. We want our 4p to be on the other side. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2, which means this will be negative 1/2. And then we want it to stay factored out. So I'm going to have my y plus 1 right there. And now this is in standard form, right? X minus 5 squared equals negative 1/2 times y plus 1. And then at this point, we could figure out our vertex, right? Our vertex is going to be 5, negative 1. We could solve for our p-value, and we could use that to determine our focus and our directrix. So this is how you complete the square to rewrite a conic parabola in standard form.